Wyoming Territory, 1873. The meeting hall stank of desperation and cheap whiskey. 6 mail-order brides stood in a row like livestock at market. 6 strangers who'd crossed 2,000 miles to wed men they'd never laid eyes on. The bidding ran cruel and quick. $300 for the pretty one, $250 for the strong one. Coin changed hands, lives traded away. Lawful, maybe. Right, never. Then came number 6. The woman who stepped onto that platform stood barely past 3.5 feet tall, a grown woman of full years carried in a small and perfect frame, and she moved like she was walking to her own hanging. The laughter started before Hollis even spoke her name. Mean laughter, the kind that cuts. Then silence. Clipped, total, shamming silence. No one wanted the tiny one. In the back corner, Caleb Hartwell touched the 2 silver dollars in his pocket. His last $2, the ones meant to buy cornmeal for the month. His fingers closed around the cold metal and made a choice that would either save them both or break them trying. The meeting hall stank of desperation and cheap whiskey. Not a true auction, nothing legal about the word, just what the territory called the introduction ceremony, where mail-order brides met the men who'd sent for them, where offers were made, bids placed, everything but the honest name for it. Cash on the table. Loudest man won. Right, never. But this was Wyoming in 1873, and survival had a way of shouting morality down. Caleb Hartwell stood in the back corner, hat pulled low, shoulders hunched against the wall like he was trying to vanish into the timber. He hadn't come to bid, couldn't bid, had exactly 2 silver dollars in his pocket, and those were promised to enough cornmeal to last him a month. Promised. Yet here he stood anyway, watching the county's finest paw over these women the way buyers paw over horses at a fall fair. 6 mail-order brides had come in on the morning train. 6 women desperate enough to ride 2,000 miles and marry total strangers in a land where winter killed the weak and loneliness killed everyone the winter spared. The first went fast. A pretty blonde thing, couldn't have been a day over 19 smooth hands that had never known real work. She smiled small and nervous when the banker bid $300. $300. Caleb felt the 2 coins in his pocket. They seemed to shrink. The second fetched $250. A German woman, broad-shouldered, capable eyes, the kind that said she knew what hard work meant and didn't fear it. The cooper took her, looked pleased about it too. The third, the fourth, the fifth, all claimed, all bought like furniture off an estate sale. Then came number 6, and the auctioneer, Hollis Pratt, red-faced and already drunk by 2 in the afternoon, hesitated before he called her forward. "Gentlemen, we've saved the last for last." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Mean laughter. The kind that tells you exactly what's coming before you ever see it. The woman who stepped onto the platform didn't move like the others. She moved like she was walking to her own hanging. Small God, so small. The crown of her head barely cleared the edge of the platform rail. A woman fully grown but built to a size the men had only ever seen in children. Her arms, her hands, all of her in careful proportion, only smaller, as though the world had been cast at full scale and she at half. Dark blonde hair pulled back so tight it drew her face severe, hard, angular. Her dress hung wrong, hem dragging the boards, sleeves rolled and rolled again. Made for a woman twice her size and never altered. She kept her eyes on the floor, wouldn't look up, wouldn't meet a single gaze. Caleb knew that impulse. He'd spent 8 years doing the very same thing. "This here is Miss Annika Vesterlund," Hollis announced. Whatever enthusiasm he'd had was gone. 826 came all the way from where was it? Bergen. Bergen, she said, her voice low, accented, lovely in a way that didn't match the rest of the moment. "Right, Bergen, she reads and writes, says she's good with her hands, and she's, well, you can all see she's the size of my boy," somebody hollered. "What's a man do with that?" More laughter. Annika's jaw tightened, but she didn't look up, didn't defend herself, just stood there and took it. Caleb felt his chest pull tight. Recognition, maybe, or memory. He'd stood like that once after Antietam, after watching half his company die in a cornfield that turned black with their blood. He'd stood exactly like that. "Let's start offers at $100, Hollis tried. Gentlemen may propose marriage with a financial commitment to show good faith. Legal language, barely. Everyone knew what this was. His voice carried no conviction, like he already knew how it would go. Silence. Complete and absolute silence. Somewhere a clock ticked. Somewhere else a man coughed. But nobody bid. Caleb watched Annika's shoulders draw inward just slightly, just enough to show that every second of quiet landed on her like a fist. 75, Hollis tried again, desperation creeping in. Come now, gentlemen, she's educated. That's worth something. Can she cook? Somebody called. Can she even reach the stove? Can she haul a bucket? Can she do one single thing a wife's supposed to do? Laughter. Always the laughter. Cruelty dressed up as a joke. $50, Hollis said, quieter now. Nothing. Annika's hands were clasped so tight the small knuckles had gone white. Her breathing had changed. Faster, shallower. The breathing of someone fighting hard not to weep in front of strangers. Caleb knew that breathing too. He'd done it for months after Alina left, after she'd looked at him with something worse than hate, with pity, with disappointment. 25, Hollis whispered. The room had gone uncomfortable now. This wasn't sport anymore. This was just cruelty. Even the hardest men in the crowd could feel it. A man cleared his throat. Another studied his boots like they held scripture, but nobody bid because nobody wanted her. Nobody wanted the tiny one. Caleb's hand went to his pocket, touched the $2 silver there. His emergency fund, his buffer against starving, his last defense against the Wyoming winter coming in 6 weeks. He should save it. He should be smart. He should walk away, except he was looking at Annika's face now. She'd finally lifted her eyes just for a second, just long enough for Caleb to see what was there. Not defeat, not quite yet, something worse, something more familiar. The desperate hope that someone, anyone, would see her as a person and not a curiosity in a sideshow. He'd seen that look in his shaving mirror every morning for 3 years. Going once, Hollis said, his voice nearly gone. Caleb's fingers closed around the coins. This was madness, the stupidest thing he could do. He needed that money, needed it to live, couldn't afford to throw it away on what? On pity, on sentiment, on some fool sense of kinship with another broken soul, going twice. But then Smart hadn't gotten him anywhere, had it? Smart had cost him everything, his wife, his pride, his hope. Maybe it was time to try something else. Maybe it was time to try desperate. $2. His voice cut the silence like a rifle shot. Every head in the room turned. Hollis's mouth fell open. A man's whiskey glass slipped and shattered on the floor. And Annika's eyes locked onto his with a look he couldn't quite read. Then the laughter started, roaring, rolling waves of it. Men doubled over, slapping their knees, gasping. $2. Did he say $2? Hell, I wouldn't pay $2 for a 3-legged mule. Hartwell's finally cracked. Little man wants a little wife. Caleb ignored them, every one of them. He was looking at Annika, and she was looking back. And in her dark eyes, he saw the hope flare brighter for one moment before she remembered to snuff it out. Hollis sputtered, his face cycling through shades of red. Now see here, Hartwell. This is a human woman we're speaking of, not a nada. $2 is my bid, Caleb cut in, steady now. That meet your reserve, or do I need to find 2 bits more? The auctioneer looked helplessly at the crowd, at Annika, at his near-empty cash box. The men who ran these bride auctions took a commission, and even $2 beat nothing, which is exactly what he'd get if she went unclaimed. This is highly irregular, Hollis muttered. So is auctioning human beings, Caleb said quietly, but here we are. A few laughs died in men's throats. The truth had that effect. Anyone else? Hollis made one last try, scanning the crowd. Anyone at all willing to bid on Miss Vesterlund? $3, anyone. The silence that answered was absolute. Fine, Hollis slumped. Sold to Caleb Hartwell for $2. He paused. God help you both. Caleb walked forward through the parting crowd, keenly aware of the eyes on him, the whispers starting to buzz like flies on a carcass. He pulled the $2 silver from his pocket, his last $2. Leaving him with exactly nothing to his name, and set them on the money box with a solid clink. Up close, Annika was even smaller than he'd judged, the top of her head not reaching the middle of his chest, and Caleb was no giant himself. Her eyes, now that he could see them right, were a deep brown flecked with gold, and they held a weariness that went to the bone. She looked at him like he was a riddle she didn't trust, a snare she couldn't quite name. "Ma'am," he said, touching his hat brim. She didn't answer, just watched him with those careful, measuring eyes. "Mr. Hartwell," Holly said, sliding papers across the makeshift desk. "You'll need to sign here, and I can read," Caleb said shortly, scanning the documents. A standard marriage contract binding under territorial law, granting Annika Vesterlund to him as his lawful wife in exchange for the agreed sum. His stomach turned at the word. Granting, like she was property, but he signed anyway. What choice did either of them have? When he straightened and held the pen out to Annika, she stared at it like it might bite. "You need to sign too," he said gently, "if you're willing." "Willing," she repeated, her voice rough from disuse but cultured, educated. "That's an interesting word for it." "You don't have to," he said, and meant it. "If you'd rather take your chances elsewhere, I won't hold you to this." "Elsewhere?" she laughed, short and bitter. "Yes, my many other options." She took the pen, her small hand shaking as she signed in neat, precise script, Annika Margaret Vesterlund. Then, after a pause, she added Hartwell to the end of it. Just like that, she was his wife. The crowd had already begun drifting off, losing interest now the entertainment was done. Caleb heard their talk anyway, the wagers on how long she'd last, the jokes about what $2 bought a man these days, the mock pity for the poor fool who just made the worst purchase of his life. "Where's your belongings?" Caleb asked. Annika nodded toward the corner where a single battered trunk sat. That was it. Everything she owned in the world fit in one small trunk. Caleb lifted it. It weighed almost nothing. He tipped his head toward the door. "My wagon's outside." She followed him in silence, her short legs taking 2 quick steps for each of his, that quick gait the only thing about her that didn't seem deliberate. How long had she been traveling? How long since a real meal, a real bed? The Wyoming afternoon hit them like a wall of heat and light after the dimness of the hall. Caleb's wagon, and that was a generous word for the rickety heap of wood and wheels he'd cobbled together, waited at the hitching post, his old mule Bess dozing in the traces. He helped Annika up onto the seat, noted how light she was when his hands circled her, how small and certain her grip was when she caught the rail. She settled herself with careful precision, arranging her skirts, folding her hands in her lap, staring straight ahead at nothing, her feet not near reaching the floorboard. Caleb climbed up beside her and took the reins. Before he could cluck Bess into motion, a rider drew up alongside them. Gustus Thorne sat astride a magnificent black stallion, his fine suit dusty from the road but still marking him the richest man in 3 counties. His smile was pleasant. His eyes were cold as January. "Hartwell," he said affably, "hear you made quite the purchase in there." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Mr. Thorne, $2. Thorne shook his head in mock wonder. "Have to admire your economy. Was there something you wanted?" "Just here to remind you your lease payment comes due 90 days from today." $600. Thorne's gaze slid to Annika, dismissive, contemptuous. "Though I expect you won't have it now, what with spending your reserves on this." Caleb's hands tightened on the reins. Bess shifted, nervous. "I'll have your money." "I'm sure you believe that." Thorne's smile never wavered. "But winter's coming, Hartwell. A man alone can't survive a Wyoming winter, least of all with a ranch falling down around his ears and a wife who—" He paused, looking Annika up and down like she was stock at auction. "Well, a wife that size won't be much help hauling feed or mending fence, will she?" Beside him, Caleb felt Annika draw a careful breath, but she didn't flinch, didn't react at all. "We done here?" Caleb asked, voice low and dangerous. Thorne studied him a long moment, then shrugged. "For now, but do think on my offer. $500 for the land cash. You could take your wife and start fresh somewhere else. Somewhere that doesn't ask a man to survive the impossible." He tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "Ma'am, welcome to Wyoming. Hope you survive it." He wheeled the horse and rode off, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Annika waited until he was out of earshot. "Friend of yours?" she asked dryly. Despite everything, despite the disaster his life had become in the span of one afternoon, Caleb almost smiled. "Wouldn't say that. What does he want with your land?" Timber writes, "My property's got old-growth pine, the kind that fetches premium prices out west. He's been trying to buy me out 2 years. And you keep refusing." "It's my land," he said simply. "Only thing I've got left that's mine." She was quiet a moment then. $2 and some land. Quite the empire you've built. He did smile then, brief and rueful. "Way you put it, I'm starting to see why no one else bid on you. You've got a sharp tongue." "Among my many flaws," she agreed. "I expect you'll discover the rest soon enough." Caleb clucked at Bess, and the old mule started forward with a resigned sigh. The town fell away behind them as they headed into open country, the late afternoon sun painting the grasslands gold and amber. They rode in silence a while. Caleb was keenly aware of the woman beside him, the straightness of her spine despite plain exhaustion, the way she studied the land with a keen intelligence, cataloging and assessing, not admiring, he noticed, evaluating. "How far is it?" she asked at last. "About an hour." "Ranch is up near the foothills." "Ranch," she tested the word. "How many cattle?" He hesitated. This was where it got embarrassing. "Don't have cattle, got sheep, 38 head, was 42 last month but lost 4 to wolves. 38 sheep is barely subsistence, I know. And the house, cabin, 2 rooms, it's solid, keeps the weather out." He paused. "Mostly." She might have been hiding a smile, hard to tell. "Mostly," she repeated. "Yeah, mostly. And you work this ranch alone?" "Did." "Now there's 2 of us." "2 of us," she echoed softly. "Then why did you bid on me?" The question hung between them. Caleb thought about lying, making it sound noble or calculated or anything other than what it was. But something in Annika's eyes, the way she watched him, made lying feel impossible. "Didn't seem right," he said finally. "What would have happened to you if nobody bid? So you spent your last money on pity." "Wasn't pity." He struggled for the right words. "You were still standing after all of it. The journey, the auction, all those men laughing. You were still standing." He glanced at her. "That's not nothing." She turned to look at him then, really look. "I had nowhere else to go," she said quietly. "Standing was all I had left. I know the feeling." Understanding passed between them in that moment. Not complete, not yet, but recognition. 2 people who'd reached the end of their ropes and found each other dangling there. "What happened to your last wife?" Annika asked. Caleb should have expected it, but it still hit like a fist. "Eleanor, she left 3 years ago. Went to Silver Bend with a man named Whitmore who owned half the timber mills there. Sent divorce papers 6 months on." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She was right to go. I couldn't give her the life she wanted." "And what life was that?" "One that didn't mean choosing between fixing the roof and buying winter feed. One where she didn't make her own soap and wear the same 2 dresses till they fell apart." He paused. "One with possibilities." Annika took this in. "And what life do you suppose I wanted, Mr. Hartwell?" "Don't know, but I'm guessing it wasn't this." "No," she agreed softly, "it wasn't this." The sun was sinking lower now, the sky shading orange and violet. They crested a rise, and there it was, his ranch such as it was. The cabin hunched against the hillside like something trying to hide, its log walls weathered gray, one shutter hanging crooked, the roof patched in 3 places with mismatched wood. The barn, if you could call it that, sagged to the left, plainly wanting repairs he couldn't afford. The sheep pen had gaps where posts had rotted through. An old forge sat near the barn, abandoned, rusted, unused in years most likely. Beside him, Annika went very still. "This is it," Caleb said, hating how beaten his voice sounded. "I know it's not much. It has walls." She cut in, "and a roof." She turned to look at him. "That's more than I had this morning." He pulled Bess up in front of the cabin, climbed down, then reached up to help Annika. She hesitated a moment before setting her small hands on his shoulders and letting him lift her down, the whole of her weight nothing in his arms. Up close he could see the fine lines of exhaustion around her eyes, the way she swayed slightly on her feet. "When did you last eat?" he asked. She had to think on it. "Yesterday morning, I think. The days have run together. Come on." He grabbed her trunk. "Let's get some food in you." Inside of the cabin was dim and spare. One room served as kitchen, dining, and living space. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. A rough table with 2 chairs sat by the window. The bedroom door stood open, revealing a simple bed with a patchwork quilt. Annika stood in the middle of the main room, taking it all in with those measuring eyes. The bedroom's yours, Caleb said, setting her trunk down. I'll sleep out here. She turned to him sharply. This is your home and I'm your wife, legally at least. You should have the bed, Mr. Hartwell. Caleb, he interrupted. If we're married, might as well use first names. Caleb, she corrected herself. I don't expect you to give up your bed for me. This is a business arrangement. We both know what this is. What is it? The question seemed to catch her off guard. I needed a way to survive. You needed what? Help with the ranch, someone to cook and clean. We made a practical arrangement. Is that what you think this is? Isn't it? She lifted her chin, defiant, but he could see the fear beneath it. The fear of hopping for more and being disappointed. Caleb moved to the fireplace, started building a fire, giving his hands something to do. I think, he said carefully, we both needed something we couldn't name. I think we're both running from things we don't speak of. He struck the flint, watched the sparks catch the kindling. And I think we just made a promise to each other in that hall, whether we meant to or not. A promise to try, to not give up, to still be standing when winter comes. The kindling caught. Firelight began to fill the room. Caleb stood and faced her. I won't lie to you, Annika. I don't have much to offer. This ranch is failing. I'm in debt to a man who'd love nothing better than to see me dead in a ditch. And I spent my last $2 on a woman I don't know for reasons I can't fully explain. He paused. But I'm still here, still fighting. And if you're willing to fight too, then maybe we've got a chance. She studied him a long while. He could see her working through it, weighing risks, measuring options, trying to decide if she could trust him even a little. Finally, I'll take the bedroom, but only because I'm exhausted and fairly certain I'll collapse if I don't sit down soon. Tomorrow we'll set proper arrangements. Fair enough. He heated some beans and salt pork, nothing fancy but hot and filling. They ate in silence. Annika ate with the careful efficiency of someone who'd known hunger before. When she finished, she looked marginally more human, some color back in her pale cheeks. I should, she gestured vaguely at the bedroom. Of course, water's in the pitcher, extra blanket in the chest if you need it. She stood, swaying slightly. Caleb fought the urge to steady her. She was skittish as a colt already. He wouldn't add to it. At the bedroom door she paused, looked back. Caleb. Yeah, thank you for the $2. Before he could answer, she shut the door softly behind her. Caleb stood alone in the firelight, listening to the small sounds of her moving around the bedroom. The rustle of cloth, the creak of the bed, the long sigh that might have been relief or exhaustion or grief. He'd spent his last money on a woman who didn't trust him, for a ranch that was dying, in a fight he'd most likely lose. But for the first time in 3 years, the cabin didn't feel quite so empty. Outside, the Wyoming night settled in, vast and star-strewn and full of things both terrible and wonderful that neither of them could yet imagine. Dawn broke cold and gray over the Wyoming hills. Caleb woke on the floor near the fireplace, his back aching from the hard boards, and lay still a moment, listening to the quiet. The cabin felt different somehow, occupied. Another person breathing behind that closed door, another heartbeat sharing the space. He rose quietly, built up the fire, set coffee to boil. The familiar motion steadied him, gave his nervous energy something to do. What did a man say to a wife he'd bought for $2? What did she expect of him? What did he expect of himself? The bedroom door opened as he was slicing bacon into the pan. Annika emerged looking both better and worse than the night before. Better for the sleep, some of the exhaustion lifted from her face. Worse because the morning light was less kind than firelight, marking the hollows in her cheeks, the thinness of her wrists, the way her dress hung on a frame that had known real hunger. Morning, Caleb said, keeping his voice even. Good morning. She stood awkwardly in the doorway, plainly unsure of her place in this new world. I should be doing that. Doing what? Cooking. Isn't that part of the arrangement? Caleb flipped the bacon, weighed his words. Annika, I didn't buy a servant. I can cook my own breakfast. Then what did you buy? The question came sharper than she likely meant, edged with frustration and confusion. He looked at her, direct and honest. I don't know yet. But how about we figure it out together instead of you assuming the worst of me right off? She blinked, taken aback. Then slowly some of the stiffness left her shoulders. That's fair. I apologize. No need. Coffee's ready if you want some. They ate in a silence more cautious than comfortable, two strangers learning to orbit each other. Caleb watched her from the corner of his eye, how she ate slowly now she wasn't starving, how she held the cup in both small hands as if warming herself, how her gaze kept drifting to the window and the land beyond. "Tell me about the ranch," she said at last. "The real situation, not the version you gave those men in town." Caleb set down his fork. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. If I'm to be here, I should understand what we're dealing with." "We." The word hung between them, small but heavy. So he told her about the land lease, how it wasn't truly his land, how he'd been homesteading it legally under territorial law 8 years. But Augustus Thorne had bought the original deed from the widow who'd held it, and now demanded $600 in back rent Caleb supposedly owed. About the sheep, his only real income, the wool and the meat, barely covering the basics. About the timber on his land, old-growth pine, the kind that would make Thorne rich if he could clear-cut it. About having 90 days to come up with $600 or lose everything. 38 sheep, Annika said when he'd finished. "How many would you need to sell to raise 600? All of them at premium prices, which leaves me nothing to rebuild with, and Thorne knows this. He's counting on it. When I can't pay, he evicts me, takes the land, cuts the timber, makes thousands." Annika took it in, her fingers tapping the cup in a rhythm that suggested calculation. "So you're trapped. Can't earn enough to pay, can't sell your way clear, can't run without losing your homestead claim. That's about the sum of it, and Thorne's just waiting for me to fail." "He's not waiting. He's helping you fail, every chance he gets." Looked at him with those sharp, intelligent eyes. "Then we need a different approach, something he isn't expecting." "Like what?" She stood, crossed to the window, looked out at the ramshackle ranch, at the rusted forge near the barn. "That forge, does it work?" Caleb blinked at the sudden turn. "Don't know, hasn't been used since I've been here. Fellow before me was a blacksmith before he died, but I'm not, never learned." "I have." She turned to face him. "My father was a master blacksmith in Bergen. Trained me from the age of 10. I can work iron, steel, copper, anything." Hope flared in Caleb's chest, dangerous and fragile as a new flame. "You're saying—" "I'm saying there's a mining camp 20 miles north, Silver Bend, growing fast. They need tools, picks, shovels, nails, horseshoes, things that break and wear and want replacing constantly." She crossed her arms. "Things I can make, things we can sell for real money." Caleb stood slowly, walked to where she stood by the window. "You really think you could raise enough in 90 days to pay off Thorne?" "I don't know, but I know sitting here doing nothing guarantees we lose, at least this way we fight." She met his gaze steadily. "You spent your last $2 on me. You said you didn't buy a servant. Fine. You bought a blacksmith. Let me work." Something shifted in his chest. This woman, this strange, small, fierce woman, was offering him hope when he had none. "All right," he said. "Let's see if that forge still works." They spent the morning examining the old smithy. The forge itself was in rough shape, brick crumbling, bellows rotted, anvil rusted but solid. The tools lay scattered, broken, abandoned. But Annika moved through it all with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was looking at. She dragged over an empty crate, stepped up to reach the anvil, ran her small hands across the surface. "We can fix this," she said. "Most of it. Need new bellows, fresh coal, some replacement tools. But the bones are good." "How much would that run?" she calculated silently. $40, maybe 50. Caleb's heart sank. "I don't have $40. Then we borrow it." "From who?" "Thorne. He'd love that. Put me deeper in his debt." "No," she turned to him. "From the community, from other ranchers, small amounts from many people. We tell them what we're doing, offer them first pick of tools at cost. We build trust. And if they say no, then we find another way. But we don't give up." She said it with such absolute conviction that Caleb nearly believed her. Nearly. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. "You could leave, take your chances in town, find work somewhere. You don't owe me anything." "Don't I?" She stepped closer, tilting her head far back to hold his eyes. "You gave me dignity when I had none. You looked at me, actually looked at me, when every other man saw a freak or a joke or a burden." Her voice dropped. "That's worth more than cattle. That's worth fighting for." Caleb couldn't breathe of a sudden, couldn't speak. "This woman. God, this woman." "Then we fight," he managed at last. "Together." "Together," she agreed. They shook hands, formal, firm, a contract sealed. Her hand vanished inside his, but her grip was iron. The next 3 days were a blur of work. Caleb rode to neighboring ranches, explained the situation, asked for small loans. Some said no, but some said yes. Mateo, an older rancher, lean and weathered, who'd watched Thorne's tactics for years. $20, Mateo said, counting it out careful. Pay me back when you can, no interest, just beat that bastard. Winona Graywind, a Shoshone woman widowed who ran her own small ranch with 3 sons. $15, she said. And my boys will help mend your forge. They need to learn honest work. Old Tobias Reed, whom everyone called Toby, a broken-down rancher who'd lost half his land to Thorne 2 years back. $10. It's all I've got, but it's yours. By the end of the first week, Caleb had $73, more than enough to start. Annika took the money, rode to town alone, came back with a wagon full of supplies: coal, leather for new bellows, iron stock, tools to replace the broken ones. She worked 18 hours that first day, rebuilding the forge from memory and instinct, scrambling up and down her crate, nailing platforms into place so she could reach what she needed. Caleb watched her, fascinated. She moved with absolute confidence here, no hesitation, no doubt. This was her world. Winona's sons, strong young men, helped hoist the heavy stones, rebuild the chimney, frame the new bellows. But it was Annika directing all of it, her small frame somehow everywhere at once. By the 3rd day, the forge was working. Not perfect, but working. Annika lit it for the first time at dawn on the 4th day. Caleb stood watching as the coal caught, as the heat began to rise, as she worked the bellows with a steady rhythm, her whole body leaning into the effort. She took up a length of iron stock, set it in the coals, waited. When it glowed orange red, she pulled it out, laid it on the anvil, raised the hammer, and brought it down. The ring of metal on metal echoed across the valley. Again, again, again. Her movements precise, economical, each strike deliberate, every ounce of her slight weight behind it. She was making a horseshoe. Plain, but watching her work, Caleb felt something he hadn't felt in years. Awe. She finished the shoe in 20 minutes, plunged it hissing into the water bucket, held it up to inspect. Perfect. Well, she asked, not looking at him. You're incredible, Caleb said honestly. She did look then, surprise flickering across her face, like she wasn't used to praise, didn't know what to do with it. It's just a horseshoe. It's hope, Caleb corrected. It's a chance, it's everything. She set the shoe aside carefully. Then let's make more. The 2nd week was production. Annika worked dawn to dark, making horseshoes, nails, simple tools. Caleb handled the sheep in the morning, then spent afternoons as her assistant, learning, helping, keeping the fire hot and the iron ready. They fell into a rhythm, comfortable in its simplicity. She'd point, he'd hand her tools. She'd nod, he'd pump the bellows. They didn't talk much while working. Didn't need to. But at night, after they'd eaten, after Annika had gone to the bedroom and Caleb lay on the floor near the dying fire, he found himself thinking of her. The way she moved, strong and sure despite her size. The focus on her face when she worked, absolute. The small smile she got when a piece came out right. He found himself wanting to make her smile more, found himself listening for her breathing through the door, just to know she was still there. This was dangerous. He knew it was dangerous. She was his wife in name only, a business arrangement. She'd said so herself. Letting it become more would tangle everything. But God, watching her, hair tied back, face smudged with soot, small arms swinging that hammer, watching her glance up and catch him staring and raise one eyebrow in question, watching her, he was already lost. 3rd week brought quiet progress. The forge hummed day and night, Annika's rhythm steady, Caleb learning. 20 items the 1st week, 25 the 2nd, 30 by the 3rd. The money jar filling slow, painfully slow, but filling. $100, $120, $150. Caleb watched her work one evening, firelight painting her face gold, the concentration in her eyes, the strength in every motion. She looked up, caught him staring, raised one eyebrow. What? Nothing, just you're remarkable at this. She smiled, small, shy. It's just metalwork. It's magic. The smile grew, and Caleb felt his heart do something he couldn't take back. He was falling in love with his $2 bride, and he didn't know how to stop, didn't want to stop. Outside, the Wyoming winter crept nearer. 67 days until Thorne's deadline. They had $150, needed 450 more. But for the first time in 3 years, Caleb believed they might just make it. Morning came too soon after another long night of work. Caleb stood looking over their progress, the money on the table, the coins gleaming in early light. $150 in 3 weeks. It was working, slow but working. Annika emerged from the bedroom, hair loose, face softer in sleep than waking. "How much time do we have left?" she asked. Caleb had to figure it. 67 days till Thorne's deadline. "And how much have we made?" $150. "From 3 weeks of sales." She did the math silently. "So we need 450 more in 67 days. That's about $7 a day every day for over 2 months. We've been averaging closer to 8 if we hold that." "If," she echoed, the word hung heavy. So many things could go wrong, tools could break, supplies could run dry, winter could come early, Thorne could interfere, any one of 100 disasters could derail them. "We'll make it," Caleb said, trying to sound sure. "You don't know that." "No, but I believe it. That has to count for something." She studied him a long moment, then nodded. "All right, I'll believe it too." The 4th week opened with trouble. Annika's hammer broke, the handle splintering mid-swing. She near broke her hand. 2 days lost finding and fitting a replacement. Then the coal supplier in town refused to sell to them. "Thorne's orders," he said, not quite meeting Caleb's eyes. "Can't do business with you anymore." Caleb rode 20 miles to the next town, found another supplier who charged double, their margin cut in half. But they adapted, bought less coal, worked more careful, made smaller items that used less fuel. Still they climbed. $175, $200, $225. Each sale a victory. Each coin proof they could win this. Then on the 30th day everything shifted. Word filtered back from town. Thorne had been asking questions about their forge, their sales, their progress. A thin, nervous man named Jeremiah Cobb brought the news. He sometimes hauled timber for Thorne, and he rode up to the ranch at dusk looking over his shoulder like he was followed. "Caleb, Miss Vesterlund, I need to talk to you." They gathered in the barn, away from prying eyes. Cobb was sweating despite the cool evening. "Thorne knows what you're doing. Knows you're close to making the payment." "How close does he think we are?" Annika asked. "Don't know exactly, but he's planning something. I don't know what. He's not the kind to just let you win." Caleb's stomach tightened. "Why are you telling us this?" Cobb's face crumpled. "Because my wife, she's sick, real sick, lung fever. Thorne promised me medicine if I kept him informed about goings-on in the valley." He looked at the ground. "But he lied, gave me colored water instead of real medicine. She's getting worse, and I can't keep helping a man who'd let my wife die to save a few dollars on medicine." His voice broke. "I'm done with him. I wanted to warn you. Whatever he's got planned, it's coming soon." Winona Greywind had been listening from the shadows. She stepped forward now. "Where is she?" "Your wife?" Cobb looked up surprised. "At our cabin 3 miles east, but she can't be moved, too weak." "I'll go to her," Winona said. "I know medicine, real medicine." She looked at Caleb. "If his wife is truly sick, if he's telling the truth, then he's not our enemy. Thorne is." Caleb studied Cobb's face, saw genuine fear there, genuine regret. "All right," he said finally. "Winona goes to check on your wife. You stay here and help us. If you're lying, if this is some trick, you won't like what comes next." Cobb's relief was plain. "Thank you, I swear, whatever you need." Over the next 2 weeks their group grew. Mateo's nephews joined, young men, strong, willing to stand guard against Thorne's men. Toby Reed spent more time at the ranch, helping with repairs, with the sheep, with anything that freed Caleb and Annika to focus on the forge. Winona's eldest, a quiet boy named Standing Elk who barely spoke but worked like 3 men, learned to pump the bellows, sort coal, prepare iron stock. And Cobb worked like a man possessed, hauling supplies, standing night watch, doing whatever grunt work needed doing, trying to make amends. Winona confirmed his wife was indeed sick, began treating her with herbs and tinctures. Within days the woman improved. Cobb wept when he saw her sitting up, eating soup, smiling. "I owe you everything," he told Caleb and Annika. "Whatever you need, I'm yours." The forge became a gathering place. Neighbors from across the valley would stop by to see the operation, to place orders, to bring food, fresh bread, preserves, venison. Some brought firewood for the cabin, some just brought themselves. Their presence, their solidarity against Thorn, it stopped being just Caleb and Annika against the world. It started being a community, a family. "This is what he fears most," Mateo said one evening, watching everyone work side by side. "What?" Caleb asked. "Unity. People working together instead of competing, holding each other up instead of trying to survive alone." He gestured at the scene. "Thorn thrives on isolation, on folks too scared or too proud to ask for help, but this terrifies him." Annika looked around at their growing group. "Then we should do more of it." "What do you mean?" "I mean we stop hiding, stop being defensive. We show everyone what we're doing, invite them to be part of it." She turned to Caleb. "We hold a barn raising. Get everyone together, build something permanent, show Thorn we're not going anywhere." Caleb felt that dangerous hope again. "You want to rebuild the forge, make it permanent. I want to build something that lasts beyond the next 90 days, something that says we believe in a future here." She smiled. "What do you say?" He couldn't help but smile back. "I say let's do it." They set the date 3 weeks out, sent word through the valley. The response was overwhelming. Families committed to coming, to helping, to being part of something larger than themselves. In the meantime, work went on. Annika pushed herself harder than ever, 16-hour days, sometimes 18, making tools, filling orders, building the reserve. $250, $275, $300. The money jar grew heavy, but so did the toll on Annika. Caleb found her one afternoon sitting outside the barn, staring at nothing. He'd never once seen her sit during daylight. "Annika," she didn't look at him. "I can't do this anymore." The words hit like a blow. "What?" "I'm so tired, Caleb, so tired I can't think straight, can't see straight. Yesterday I near walked into the fire, didn't even know it until Mateo pulled me back." She finally looked at him, her eyes hollow, the dark circles beneath them deep as bruises. "I'm going to hurt myself or someone else or make a mistake that costs us everything, and I don't know how to stop." Caleb knelt before her. "Then we rest. We can't afford to rest. We need you alive and able more than we need one more day of production." He took her hands, small and blistered and strong. "Annika, you've worked 20-hour days for a month. Your body can't sustain that. You'll break, and if you break, we lose everything anyway." "But no," his voice was firm. "We rest. 1 full day, you sleep, really sleep. Then we come back stronger." She looked at him, desperate. "What if we run out of time?" "Then we run out of time fighting, not because you collapse from exhaustion." He stood, pulled her up with him. "Come on, inside, sleep, that's an order." "You can't order me, I'm your partner." "You're my partner," he interrupted. "And partners look out for each other, so I'm looking out for you." She wavered. Exhaustion won. "1 day," she said finally, "that's all." "1 day," he agreed. He walked her to the cabin, to the bedroom. She collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed, asleep before he closed the door. Caleb stood in the main room, listening to her breathe, deep and even and finally peaceful. His chest cracked open. This woman, this impossible, stubborn, brilliant woman, was killing herself to save his ranch, his dream. And somewhere in the last month, somewhere between the broken tools and the midnight sessions and the quiet moments when she'd look up from her hammer and catch him watching, somewhere in there, he'd fallen completely in love with her. That night while Annika slept, Caleb sat with Mateo and Winona around a fire outside. "She's going to work herself to death," Winona said quietly. "You know that." "I know, so what do we do about it?" Caleb poked at the fire, watched the sparks rise into the dark. "I don't know, she won't stop, won't slow down. It's like she's trying to prove something." "She is," Winona said. "She's trying to prove she's worth more than $2. The words landed heavy because they were true. "She doesn't need to prove that," Caleb said. "To you maybe, but to herself." Winona shook her head. "That's different. She spent her whole life being told she's worthless. Too small, too different, too much trouble, and then you buy her for $2, the lowest bid in auction history." She looked at him directly. "Every hammer strike is her trying to show the world she's valuable, that she matters, that she's worth something." Mateo nodded slowly. "My wife, before she passed, she told me something. Said love isn't about the easy times, it's about the impossible ones, about who stands beside you when everything falls apart." He met Caleb's eyes. Annika's standing beside you through all of this. That's real love. Don't forget it, no matter what happens. Caleb felt his throat tight. I need to tell her. Yes, Winona said, you do. But what if she doesn't feel the same? What if this really is just business to her? Mateo chuckled. The mountain man and the little blacksmith, most obvious love story in the territory, and somehow the only two who don't see it yet. Winona stood. Tell her before it's too late, before either of you breaks under the weight of not saying it. She walked into the darkness, leaving Caleb alone with his thoughts and the knowledge that she was right. He had to tell Annika, had to risk everything on honesty, just as he'd risked his last $2 on faith. Annika woke at noon, disoriented, confused. She stumbled out of the bedroom, hair wild, dress wrinkled. What time is it? Caleb looked up from the bread he was slicing. Noon. Noon, Caleb, I've lost half a day. We've lost nothing. You needed sleep. You got it. Now you can work smarter instead of just harder. She looked like she wanted to argue, but her stomach growled loud, betraying her. Caleb pushed a plate toward her. Eat first. Yell at me after. She sat, ate mechanically, but he could see the color returning, the life coming back to her eyes. When she finished, she looked at him, really looked. Thank you. For what? For making me rest, for caring whether I survive this. Of course I care. The words came out more intense than he'd meant. Annika blinked, something shifting in her expression. Caleb, we should get back to work, he said quickly, standing, needing to move. Because if he let himself look, if he let himself say it, he'd say things he couldn't take back. Right. Annika said slowly. Work. But her eyes followed him, thoughtful, curious, like she was seeing something new. The barn raising came on the 42nd day. 50 people showed up, families from across the valley, ranchers, farmers, even some folks from town who'd heard about the project. They came with tools, lumber, food, energy. By noon, they'd torn down the old forge completely. By evening, they'd built something new. Solid stone foundation, proper chimney, reinforced walls, a roof that wouldn't fall. Permanent, built to last. And built lower at the working bench the way Annika asked, so she'd never need a crate to reach her anvil again. She stood looking at it as the sun set, eyes shining with unshed tears. It's beautiful, she whispered. Mateo came up beside her. It's yours, built by people who believe in you, who want you to win. He gestured at the crowd. You're not alone anymore, neither of you. That night they celebrated, music, dancing, food shared freely, stories told and retold about beating Thorn. Caleb danced with Annika under the stars, lifting her so her feet swung clear of the ground, and she laughed, really laughed. I can't believe this is real, she said. It's real, all these people helping us, believing in us. They believe in you, Caleb corrected. You gave them something to believe in. She pulled back slightly, looked at him. We gave them something, together. Yeah, he agreed softly, together. The moment stretched, fragile and perfect. Then someone called Caleb's name and the moment broke. But something had shifted, something neither of them could name yet but both could feel. The 6th week brought an unexpected complication. A stranger rode up to the ranch, a tall, well-dressed man, 50 maybe, with intelligent eyes and a careful way of moving. Caleb Hartwell, that's me. Name's Walter Boyd. I'm a buyer for the mining companies. Heard about your operation, about your blacksmith. He looked toward the new forge where Annika was working. I'd like to make a deal, Caleb tensed. What kind of deal? Exclusive contract. You provide all the tools for my camps, picks, shovels, hammers, whatever we need. I guarantee purchase of 200 items a month at $4 per item. Caleb did the math. $800 a month, more than enough to pay Thorn and rebuild, more than enough to thrive. That's generous. It's business. Your blacksmith does quality work. I've seen samples. I need quality. We both win. Boyd pulled out a contract. Signed today. First payment on delivery of 50 items, due in 2 weeks. Caleb took the contract, read it carefully. It was legitimate, standard terms, fair, almost too fair. Why us? Caleb asked. There are other blacksmiths. Not good ones, not out here, and not ones who work as hard as your wife apparently does. Boyd smiled. I admire persistence, Mr. Hartwell. I like betting on people who refuse to quit. So do we have a deal? Caleb wanted to sign, wanted it desperately, but something nagged at him. Give me 1 day to talk it over with my partner. Boyd nodded. One day, then the offer expires. He rode off, leaving Caleb holding the contract that could save everything. That night Caleb showed Annika the contract. She read it 3 times. It's perfect, she said. I know. So why do you look worried? Caleb hesitated. Because perfect doesn't exist. Not out here, not for people like us. Annika set the contract down. You think it's a trap? I think Thorne spent the last month making our lives hell. And suddenly a stranger shows up offering exactly what we need exactly when we need it. He shook his head. Coincidences like that don't happen. So what do? We investigate. Mateo knows people can ask around, find out if Walter Boyd is real, if he's legitimate, and if he is, then we sign and we save the ranch. And if he's not, Caleb met her eyes, then we keep fighting, same as always. Mateo returned the next morning, his face grim. Walter Boyd is real. He's a buyer, been working the territory 10 years. Caleb felt relief flood through him. So it's legitimate. Yes and no, Mateo dismounted. Boyd's legitimate, but he also owes Thorne money, a lot of money, gambling debts out of Silver Bend. Relief evaporated. So Thorne sent him. Probably. The contract's real. But there's likely a clause somewhere that gives Thorne control, or leverage, or something. Mateo handed Caleb the contract. Read it again. Careful, look for the trap. Caleb and Annika spent 3 hours going through every line, every word. Finally, Annika found it buried in Section 7, subsection C. In the event of non-delivery of agreed-upon items, the buyer reserves the right to claim materials and equipment as compensation for breach of contract. Annika read it aloud. Materials and equipment, that's vague. Intentionally vague, Caleb said. They could claim the forge, the tools, hell, the whole ranch as equipment used to produce the items. So if we miss even one deadline, Thorne gets everything anyway. They stared at the contract, so close, so impossibly close to salvation and yet still a trap. We could modify it, Annika said. Strike that clause, offer different terms. Boyd won't accept, he needs that clause for Thorne. Then we refuse, Caleb nodded. We refuse. Annika reached across the table, took his hand. We'll find another way. I know, and he did because they always did. When Boyd returned that afternoon, Caleb handed back the contract unsigned. I appreciate the offer, but the terms don't work for us. Boyd's pleasant expression didn't change. That's unfortunate. The offer was quite generous. Generous with a trap in Section 7. Now Boyd's smile faltered just slightly. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do, and you can tell Thorne his tricks are getting predictable. Boyd's face hardened. You're making a mistake, Hartwell. That contract was your best chance. Then I guess we'll take our chances elsewhere. Boyd rode off without another word, leaving Caleb and Annika standing in the yard. We just refused $800 a month, Annika said quietly. I know. We might have just lost our last real chance to save the ranch. I know that too, she turned to him. So why don't you look upset? Caleb smiled. Because we're still standing, still fighting, still refusing to let Thorne win through tricks and lies. He took her hand. That's worth more than any contract. Annika squeezed back. You're either very brave or very foolish. Probably both, she laughed, actually laughed. The sound surprised them both. We're going to lose everything, aren't we? She said, still smiling. Probably, but we'll lose it honestly, on our own terms. I can live with that. They stood there, hands linked, watching the sun set over the mountains, and for just that moment everything felt possible again. The 8th week brought them to $400 saved. 200 to go, 30 days left. They were going to make it, actually make it. Then on the 60th day, 7 days before Thorne's deadline, disaster struck. Not sabotage this time, just bad luck, just Wyoming being Wyoming. The chimney in the new forge collapsed, a structural flaw they hadn't seen during the barn raising, bricks falling inward, crushing the fire, near crushing Annika. Caleb pulled her clear just in time. She was unhurt. But the forge was destroyed. Again. And this time they had no time to rebuild. Annika stood staring at the wreckage. We're done, she said numbly. 7 days left. No forge, we're done. No, we'll find a way. What way, Caleb? We can't make tools without heat. Can't make heat without a forge. Can't build a forge in 7 days. She was right and he knew it, but he couldn't accept it, wouldn't. There has to be something, some other way to make money, to get those last $200. There isn't. She turned to him, tears streaming down her face. We lost. After everything, we lost. Caleb pulled her into his arms, let her cry, let her grieve the death of hope, and tried desperately to think of something, anything. Mateo showed up an hour later, took in the scene, the collapsed forge, the devastation on their faces. "I have $15 saved," he said quietly. "It's yours." "I have 12, Winona added. She'd arrived right behind him. 20 from me, Toby said, appearing from the barn. Caleb felt his throat tight. $47 from their friends on top of their 400. 447 total. Still 153 short of 600. Still not enough. "I can't take your money," Caleb said. "It's not taking if we're giving," Mateo replied. "We're family now. Family helps family." "Family helps family," Annika repeated like she was testing the word. She looked at Caleb. "We're still short even with their help. By over $100, I know. So what do we do?" And Caleb, for the first time since this whole thing started, had absolutely no idea. That night Caleb couldn't sleep. He lay on the floor, staring at the ceiling. Annika was in the bedroom, also awake. He could hear her moving around, restless. 6 days now until Augustus Thorne came to collect, until they lost everything. Caleb got up, moved to the window, stared out at the dark shape of the mountains against the stars. The bedroom door opened. Annika emerged, wrapped in a blanket, hair loose. She came to stand beside him at the window. "Can't sleep either." "No." They stood in silence. Then Annika spoke. "There might be a way." Caleb turned to look at her. "What way?" "The sheep. We sell them all right now. Emergency sale, whatever we can get." "Annika, those sheep are our only income, our only way to survive after we pay Thorne." "If we pay Thorne," she corrected. "Selling the sheep might get us the last 150, might. But either way, if we don't pay him, we lose the land anyway. So what's the point of keeping sheep we can't graze?" She turned to face him fully. "I say we bet it all one more time. We sell the sheep, pay Thorne, then figure out how to survive after. With no income, no forge, no sheep, nothing. With each other," she said simply. "We'll have each other, that's not nothing." Caleb stared at her, this woman who kept finding courage when his ran out. "You're sure?" "I'm terrified, but yes, I'm sure." He kissed her then, hard and desperate and full of everything he couldn't say. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "All right," he said. "We sell the sheep." Dawn broke gray and cold. Caleb and Mateo rounded up all 38 sheep, herded them into the pen. This was everything, his entire flock built over 8 years. Each one had a name, a temper. There was old Maud, the first ewe he'd ever bought, ornery but a good mother, and Duke, the big ram, mean as sin but fierce in protecting the flock, and Clover, Annika's favorite, who'd trail after her like a dog. Selling them felt like betrayal, but necessary betrayal. "Where are we taking them?" Mateo asked. "Silver Bend mining camp. They always need meat and milk. That's a 2-day drive." "I know, we leave now." "Noon today," Caleb calculated aloud. "Drive today and tomorrow. Reach Silver Bend the evening of day 2. Sell the morning of day 3. Ride back days 3 and 4. Home by dawn of day 5. He looked at the sky. "Deadline's day 7 noon. That gives us 2 days buffer. Cutting it close. Don't have a choice." They set out within the hour. Caleb, Mateo, and 38 sheep. Annika stayed behind to guard the ranch. Winona stayed with her for protection. The drive was hard. Sheep scattered, wandered, balked. It took all of Caleb's skill and Mateo's patience to keep them moving. They made 12 miles the first day, camped in a narrow draw, the sheep bunched against the cold. Caleb sat by the fire, couldn't eat, could barely think. This was it, the last desperate gamble. If the sheep sold for less than 150, if they couldn't get back in time, if anything went wrong, it was over. "You love her," Mateo said. Not a question. Caleb looked up. "Annika, you love her." "Yeah, I do." "Good, she loves you too. Anyone with eyes can see it." Mateo poked the fire. "My wife, before she died, she told me something. Said love isn't about the easy times, it's about the impossible ones, about who stands beside you when everything falls apart." He looked at Caleb. "Annika's standing beside you through all of this. That's real love, don't forget it, no matter what happens tomorrow." Caleb nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. They reached Silver Bend by noon the next day. The mining camp was chaos, hundreds of men, tents and shacks everywhere, mud and noise and desperation. The livestock buyer was a hard man named Garrett. He looked over the sheep with a critical eye. 38 head, mixed ages, decent condition. he calculated. I'll give you $40 for the lot. Caleb's heart sank. $40, they're worth at least $150. Maybe in good times, but I've got 3 other sellers this week. Market's flooded. $40's my offer, take it or leave it. Caleb looked at Mateo. $40 plus the 47 from their friends plus their 487 total. Still 113 short of 600, still not enough. We need more, Caleb said. Please, I'm begging you. $100 and they're yours. Garrett's expression didn't change. $40, that's it. I'm not running a charity. Caleb wanted to argue, wanted to plead. But he could see it wouldn't matter. Garrett had made up his mind. Fine, 40. The exchange was quick. Bills counted, sheep handed over. Caleb watched his flock driven away. 8 years of work gone for $40. Mateo put a hand on his shoulder. We tried. It wasn't enough. No, but we tried. They rode back in silence, racing the clock. Had to get home before the deadline. Had to at least be there when Thorn came, even if they couldn't pay, even if it was over. They rode through the night, horses exhausted, men more so, made it back in 3 days instead of 4, pushing the animals past their limits. Reached the ranch at dawn, 2 days before deadline, day 5 of 7. Annika ran out to meet them. One look at Caleb's face told her everything. We're short, she said, not a question. $113. She closed her eyes. We tried. Yeah. They stood in the yard, the morning sun painting everything gold, their last morning here. When will he come? Annika asked. Day 7 noon, when the lease officially expires. Then we have 2 days. To do what? She looked at him. To say goodbye to this place, to this dream. Her voice broke. To everything we fought for. Caleb pulled her close. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't save this. You saved me, she whispered. That's more important. They held each other as the sun climbed, as their last hours ticked away. Winona emerged from the cabin, her face grim. Ryder coming from the east, it's Thorn, early. Of course he'd come early, couldn't even give them their last hours in peace. Augustus Thorn rode up with 6 men, all armed, all looking pleased. He dismounted slowly, savoring the moment. Hartwell, Miss Vesterlund, beautiful morning, isn't it? Caleb said nothing. I assume you have my $600. We have 487. Thorn's smile widened. 487, how unfortunate. That's, let me see, $113 short. He pulled out the lease document, which means as of noon on day 7, this land, this cabin, everything becomes mine. He looked around with satisfaction. I'll give you until sunset today to clear out. Take what you can carry, leave the rest. We need more time, Annika said. Please, 1 more week. We can get the last 113, just 1 more. No, Thorn's voice was flat, final. You had 90 days, you failed, that's not my problem, he remounted. Sunset, after that my men remove you by force if needed. He started to turn, then paused. Oh, and Hartwell, thank you. This land's worth 10 times what you owed. The timber alone will make me rich. So thank you for being so stubborn, made the victory that much sweeter. He rode off, his men following, leaving Caleb and Annika standing in the wreckage of their dreams. Winona and Mateo tried to comfort them, offered places to stay, work, support. But Caleb barely heard, was already mentally calculating how to pack 8 years of life into a few hours. What to take, what to leave, how to start over with nothing. Again. Annika was silent, had retreated into herself, back to that empty expression from the auction, like she'd gone somewhere Caleb couldn't reach. We should start packing, he said quietly. She nodded, didn't speak. They moved into the cabin, started sorting through belongings. Caleb found the wooden box where he kept important papers, opened it. There at the bottom, the 2 silver dollars, polished and preserved. The $2 he'd spent on Annika. He picked them up, felt their weight. $2 had bought him everything, love, partnership, hope. And now they were worth nothing. Just metal, just memory. Noon came and went. The lease officially expired. They were trespassers now on land they'd fought so hard for. 1 o'clock, 2, still packing, moving like sleepwalkers. 3 o'clock, a rider appeared, not Thorn, someone else. A man in a suit, clean-shaven, official-looking. He dismounted, looked around. Caleb Hartwell, that's me. My name is Edmund Vance. I'm with the Territorial Land Office. He pulled out papers. I'm here about your land claim. Caleb felt confusion. What about it? There's been an irregularity with Augustus Thorn's deed. Hope sparked, dangerous, painful. What kind of irregularity? The woman who sold Thorne this deed, a Mrs. Harriet Dunmore, she didn't actually own the land. Vance unfolded a map. According to our records, this property was originally homesteaded by a man named Anders Vesterlund in 1867. He filed proper claim, lived here 3 years, met all the requirements. Caleb's mind raced. Vesterlund, Annika's last name. When Vesterlund died in 1870, the land should have passed to his next of kin. Not reverted to the territory, and certainly not to Mrs. Dunmore, who had no legal claim to it. Vance looked at Annika. "You're Annika Vesterlund, correct?" She nodded, stunned. "And Anders Vesterlund was your father?" "Yes, he died in a forge accident, but I thought that was in Bergen. I didn't know he'd come to America." "He came here first," Vance said. "Filed a homestead claim, established residence, then went back to bring you over, but died before he could." He handed her a document. "This is the original claim, filed in Anders Vesterlund's name, with a note that he intended to bring his daughter Annika to join him." Annika stared at the paper, hands shaking. "My father owned this land." "Yes, and when he died it passed to you, his sole heir." Vance pulled out more documents. "I've spent the last 6 weeks investigating Thorne's deed, how he obtained it. The trail led here, to you," he smiled. "Miss Vesterlund, you are the legal owner of this property, have been since your father's death. You just didn't know it." Silence. Stunned, held breath silence. Then Annika started laughing, not happy laughter, hysterical laughter. The laughter of someone pushed past all reasonable limits. "I own the land," she gasped. "We've been fighting to save land I already owned." Caleb started laughing too, because what else could they do? Mateo joined in, then Winona. Soon they were all doubled over, laughing until tears streamed, until their sides ached. Vance watched them with concern. Are you all right?" "We're perfect," Caleb managed. We're perfect." An hour later they rode to town, all of them, Vance leading. They went straight to the sheriff's office, found Thorne there drinking whiskey with the sheriff. Both men looked up as Vance entered. "Thorne, I need to speak with you." "I'm busy." "This won't wait." Vance unrolled the documents. "Your deed to the Hartwell property, it's fraudulent." Thorne's face darkened. "That's absurd. I bought it legally from Harriet Dunmore, who had no legal right to sell it. The land belongs to Annika Vesterlund, daughter of the original homesteader, has belonged to her since 1870. He set the papers on the desk. "Your lease agreement with Mr. Hartwell is void. Your claim to the land is void. You have no legal standing here." Thorne stood purple with rage. You can't. I paid good money for that deed." "Then you were defrauded. Take it up with Mrs. Dunmore, but the land is not yours, will never be yours." Vance turned to Annika. "Miss Vesterlund, the property is yours, free and clear, no debts, no leases, yours." Annika stepped forward, looked Thorne in the eye, having to tilt her head far back to do it and not flinching for a second. "I want you off my land, today. And I want compensation for every act of sabotage, every destroyed tool, every hardship you caused us." "You can't prove." "I have witnesses," Caleb interrupted. "Signed statements from a dozen people who can testify to everything you've done." Thorne looked between them, trapped. Finally he slumped. "How much?" $200, Annika said, "for damages. That's robbery. That's justice. Pay it or I file criminal charges." Thorne pulled out his wallet, counted bills with shaking hands, slapped them on the desk. "There, we're done." "Not quite," Vance said. "You're also barred from purchasing property in this territory for 5 years, pending investigation into your other land deals." He smiled coldly. "Something tells me we'll find more irregularities." Thorne stormed out, defeated, humiliated, gone. They walked out into the afternoon sunlight. Caleb felt like he was floating. "We won," Annika said, sounding dazed. "We actually won." "Yeah. My father, he did this, tried to make a home for us, and I never knew." She looked at the papers in her hands. "He died trying to build me a future, and I've been living in it without knowing." Caleb put his arm around her. "He'd be proud of you, of how you fought for it." "We fought for it." "Yeah, we did." The celebration lasted 3 days. The whole valley turned out, music, dancing, food shared freely, stories about how they'd beaten Thorne, how the mountain man and the little blacksmith had won against impossible odds. Caleb danced with Annika under the stars, lifted her high so she could see over the heads of the crowd. "I love you," he said, not asking, not hopping, just stating truth. She pulled back to look at him. "I love you too, have for weeks, maybe from the moment you bid on me. Only took us 90 days to admit it. We're slow learners." He kissed her, long and deep and full of promise. Around them people cheered, but Caleb barely heard. He was too busy holding his future. 6 months later, the forge was rebuilt. Permanent this time, stone and steel built to last, the working bench set low and right for the woman who'd run it. Annika's business thrived, orders coming from 3 territories. She'd taken on 2 apprentices, teaching them the trade. The flock had been rebuilt, larger than before. The cabin had grown, 2 new rooms, a proper kitchen. It was a home now, not just a shelter, a real home. Caleb proposed properly one evening on their porch under the stars. "I know we're already married, but I want to do it right this time, with vows we choose, with our family watching." Annika said yes. They married again 2 weeks later in the valley under the wide Wyoming sky, their whole community there. And when Caleb kissed his wife, his partner, his everything, he thought about those 2 silver dollars. Best investment he'd ever made. 2 years later, Annika was expecting. They had a girl and named her Hope, Hope Margaret Hartwell, because hope was what had saved them, what had brought them together, what had built their future. Caleb held his daughter for the first time, looked at Annika, at their land, at the community they'd built, at everything $2 had bought him. "Thank you," he whispered to Annika. "For what?" "For being worth everything, for standing, for fighting, for loving me." She smiled, that rare, beautiful smile. "You spent $2 on faith. I spent my life proving it was the best investment you ever made. Best investment anyone ever made." Above them, the Wyoming sky stretched endless, full of stars, full of hope, full of a future built on 2 silver dollars and all the love they'd bought.